Hi, this is Dr. Keith Ablow with another Pain to Power video. This one for those of you who are efforting any project that requires a plan. Well, that's pretty much any project, right? But especially in the case of folks who are setting up small businesses, startups, etc., often you start with something like a deck or a business plan. And I'd like to put that in the context of fact and fiction, or nonfiction and fiction. When you're writing anything, when you're conceiving of any story, the real question is it fantasy or is it fact? And why would pain to power have anything to do with that? Well, because, it's irritating and uncomfortable sometimes to get into the, weeds with these things. If you have a product and you want to bring it to market, it's easier, it feels better initially to say, well, I'm sure it'll go well. Or, man, look at this market, it's huge for this kind of an item. Drilling down and actually saying, okay, yeah, but what are some of the nuances here? What could go wrong? What's our competition? That's where people tend to spend less time than they should. It's always in every business plan, it seems, or in every deck looking for funding. Here's the competitive landscape. But too frequently, there's an urgency to kind of say, well, let's have a nod toward the competitive landscape, but not a really robust look at it. That's just one example, but it's an important one. Let's look at it, but not too much. Listen, it may be uncomfortable and painful, but remember the goal. The goal is to get to nonfiction, because only a nonfiction plan for a venture, for a startup, well, for anything, for a book, if you're creating that, what's the real story you want to tell? What's a real time frame to get the work done? What's the discipline required to actually put the words on paper? That's the important part. And while uncomfortable, the fact that it takes us closer to fact than fiction is critical, because in the end, you want the product, or you want the company to work, or you want the book to really move people and be a complete work and something that you find internally satisfying. The only way to do that is to put yourself in a bit of an uncomfortable position by saying, hey, I'm willing to take the pain. Let's look at all the competition. Let's say, what if these things went wrong? How are we going to deal with that? What are the hurdles we're going to face? Spend more time on the hurdles than the optimistic projections. They're wonderful, right? Everybody's got the hockey stick graph, for instance, in a business plan or in a proposal for funding. But, the ones that really take off, they're the ones where people anticipated, listen, what are some of the roadblocks potentially, the hurdles? Let's look at our team. What don't we have internally that we need in order to make this a nonfiction story, just like your life plan? Every story, in some ways, requires the same foundation in fact in order not to be fiction. Even novels, by the way, which are fiction, even novels require a plan so they don't fall in on themselves. You got to have character arcs in mind. You have to have a trajectory that's real for the story. Otherwise, the story doesn't hold water. It doesn't stay true to itself. The truth can be uncomfortable. It can be a little bit painful to live in it, to seek it out, but it's always the guiding light that we need in the end.